Hello and good evening. It's Elle, and I am from the Life Happenings channel. And one of the things that happens in life is something called being on the spectrum or autism. They used to have a different name for higher functioning autism. Now they just call it high functioning autism or being on the spectrum or being on a different level on the spectrum. I want to talk to you tonight about what it is like for somebody that has autism to experience something called meltdowns and shutdowns and how you can help them when they're going through this. So, I had to learn about this because my husband is on the spectrum. We did not find this out until well into his adult years, and after I married him, actually. We had gone to a specialist, somebody very well known for being extremely versed in this area. In fact, they are the top people in Illinois that diagnosed him, so we know that it's legit because that was important to me. Don't just label somebody with something that they don't have the symptoms or signs of. Most people, when they look at people that have extreme autism, they can tell right away because they're kind of disconnected in the way that they appear and the way that they interact and approach things and process things. But people that are on the higher end of the spectrum are very intelligent people. They may be what's called a savant, which means they excel in one or a couple areas or more, and yet in other areas you can tell they just don't quite connect. A lot of people with autism, you can't even tell they're autistic. So this is for somebody, I guess it's all people with autism, but it's basically me talking about the traits rather than explaining how each person with different levels of it would react. And I'm specifically using what I've seen with my own husband because he is my example of somebody with this challenge. We'll call it a challenge because we don't see it as a problem. We don't see it as a disorder. We see it as a difference. And that's the important thing about dealing with people with that have autism is not seeing them as, less than, but just different in how they process things and how they view things, how they do things. So let's talk about shutdowns and meltdowns. So first of all, the first thing I'm going to talk to you about, I believe, is let's see. Hold on a second. I have some notes here. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is a meltdown. So a meltdown, if you've ever heard of fight or flight, a meltdown would be considered the fight response. So it comes from a very extremely high adrenaline surge in the person. And it is the result of very intense anxiety. Many people in this world experience anxiety for different reasons and in different forms. Somebody with autism extremes very intense feelings of anxiety. They feel trapped, like they can't get out. There is no escape ever, 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 ever. They really might not be making sense when they're in this state of mind. You can't really understand what their issue is or why they're behaving the way they are. They can't respond to questions. They're kind of like very defensive. They can't express their feelings at the moment. They might not be able to tell you why are they being so defensive. Why is everything bothering them? Why does it seem the slightest little annoyance becomes like a major thing to somebody with this that's in this state of mind? They do not handle if you scold them and say, well, you just need to get over it or what's the matter with you. At that moment, they're just wanting a fight. They just want to push away whatever is bothering them. They want to get out of this feeling of being trapped. And anything you say to them or ask them can be seen as kind of invading their space in a sense. That's what Matthew calls it, invading space or invading the bubble. They cannot handle being put down. A lot of people that don't understand autism and some people that are just downright mean will say things like, oh, you're just being stupid or you're childish or you're a baby or, grow up or breathe. They hate when you tell them to breathe. People with autism get really upset, at least people I've dealt with, because it's almost insulting. Like to them, it's like, well, I am breathing. What are you talking about? because they take things in a very literal way. So you don't want to say stuff like that to them, especially while they're in meltdown mode. During meltdown, a person with autism can often injure themselves or also other people. I'm not saying that all of them are just like ready to kill you or something if they have a meltdown like this. But it just, you don't want to provoke them at that point because they're just not really capable of processing in a healthy way that's going to avoid a lot of hazards happening. Now let's talk about the shutdown. So autistic shutdown is like we're talking about the fight or flight or freeze. The shutdown is like the freeze response, and it usually happens in high demand situations where the person with autism is expected to think quickly, do something that's challenging at that moment when they're just already in a state of shutdown. They're forced to think fast or think deeply or think intensely, and they can't. They shut down. They just stand there, basically. This results from too much thinking, having to think too much about something, having too much physical activity. A lot of times people with autism don't do well at like social gatherings, like parties, things where there's a lot of physical talking and chatter and interacting and laughing and loud noises and lights and things like that. People with autism have a lot of social anxiety sometimes. I know Matthew has some social anxiety. Even at family gatherings when we go, he's a little nervous and kind of stays to himself. We did figure out a way to handle that. I will talk about that in a little bit, but it involves distraction. So hopefully I'll remember that when I get to that point. So also the shutdown mode for people with autism can be a result of lack of sleep, and very often people with autism have trouble quieting their mind enough that they can relax and go to sleep. I know Matthew has a lot of trouble sleeping. He is definitely a night owl when it comes to sleep. I'm the morning person. He's the night person. Y'all know me at night. I start shutting down. I'm tired. So he's more awake at night than I am. But the problem is he has a hard time going to sleep even when it's time to sleep. So he's often up for many hours at night and he's not getting enough sleep, and therefore that can cause him meltdowns and shutdowns during the next day. Okay, so when this happens, the person with autism will become quiet and withdrawn. They kind of will keep to themselves. They don't like interacting. They'll just kind of go off, by themselves. They can't take in any more information. That's what it is. There's too much sensory overload from the outside world. It's coming in and coming in. People talking, keep people asking questions, people being angry with them, people being frustrated with them. They will just draw right into themselves and try to escape. They could actually freeze or collapse, like literally fall over, kind of like faint, sort of. My husband did that one time that I can recall. He was upset over something. We were not getting along over some reason, and he tried to walk to the store and ended up collapsing almost in the middle of the street. And I guess it ended up where he fell into kind of like we have gullies on the side of our road. He fell kind of into that gully and just laid there, I guess, for a long time. I couldn't reach him on his cell phone. I didn't know what was going on. It was a pretty scary time for us because I had no idea where he was. Sometimes if the person is going through this type of mode, this meltdown or shutdown mode, they might use music to cope. Sometimes music soothes them when they're in this state of mind. They might go for a walk. Matthew often would take walks, long walks, to where I wouldn't know when he was coming back. Thankfully, he doesn't do that very much. He's learned to actually talk to me about what he's feeling, and that helps a lot with that. The person needs space. I mentioned about the space or the bubble. They need that time to go into their bubble. It's kind of like they say men need a man cave. Well, people with autism, they need a mental cave, like where they can just go in and regroup and recharge their battery, so to speak. They need to be reminded that they're okay at this point. It's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. I know you're a little, shut down right now. You're not being able to take this in, but I'm just letting you know it's okay. Take all the time you need. It's perfectly fine to be by yourself. It's not a big deal. We'll work on everything around here. And when you're ready, you come back and we'll, do what we need to do. They also need to be told that what they're doing is right. That it is okay for you to take this time. It is okay that you need to regroup. I get it. I understand that you're feeling a little too much right now. It's too overwhelming. Your brain cannot process all this. Go and do what you need to do, Unfortunately, with somebody with autism, and I found this out the hard way, and it used to frustrate the tar out of me, because y'all know me. I'm not a very patient person at times. I'm doing better with that. But when you're dealing with somebody that has autism and they are in a shutdown or meltdown mode, or, that type of thing, they can't always tell you what they want. Like, you can be screaming at them, what is wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? Why won't you talk to me? That kind of thing. And they can't tell you. Some of them will say, I don't know, or just shrug. They don't know. They can't express what they're feeling, what they want. And that's hard for those of us that aren't autistic to understand, because our mind's always working. We can tell you, okay, right now I'm thinking about the fact that I got to plan dinner. I'm going to go here or do that. I'm going to talk to so-and-so. A person with autism, when they tell you they don't know, and that's the weirdest thing, is they literally don't know. They do not know their own mind. So they can't tell you what they want or need at that moment, I mean. I'm not saying they never know their own mind. They know what they want, what they're thinking normally. But when they're in shutdown or meltdown, no, they can't. They could become mute or struggle talking. Like, they might start trying to say words and they can't get the words out. They might come out all garbled. They might not be able to talk at all, just like totally lose their ability to speak. Hold on a second. I need to check one thing here. Make sure we're still recording. Excellent. Okay. With my husband, this is how it manifests with him. So he needs to know how many people will be somewhere. And this used to drive me nuts, because I like to just go enjoy the moment. I don't like thinking about when are we going to leave. I used to have this problem with my ex-husband too, which made me wonder if he might have been on the spectrum. But he always needed to know, how many people are going to be there, how long is it going to last, what are we going to be doing, and I was like, can't you just go and enjoy it? Why do you need to know all this? Why can't we just go? And he would get really frustrated with me, like, I need to know, I have to know, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why do you have to know? Why can't you just go? Why can't you just exist and, let life unfold? That's part of the enjoyment of it all, is just letting life unfold and living in the moment. Well, people with autism have a hard time with that. Not all of them, but yeah, when they're in the shutdown or the meltdown mode, yeah, definitely. So he'd want to know when we were leaving. When's it going to be over? In other words, is there a way you can assure me I'm not going to feel trapped here? That it's never going to end? That I'm stuck? That, we have no way out? That's basically what person with autism is saying. I need to know that there is a way out, that there's a new experience coming up. It's kind of like me with jobs, honestly, which is why my husband often says, I think you're on the spectrum, which who knows, I could be, but they've never detected it in tests, and they've tested me. So basically with me, it's like I don't want to stay at a job very long, certain jobs, because I feel like there's something else I'm supposed to be doing. There's more out there and I'm missing out on it. That's kind of the restlessness feeling I get, which is why temp jobs are really good for me, because they don't last forever and I can move on to something else, until I find something that I really, really like. So we'll see. Anyway, back to what I'm talking about. So another thing with Matthew is gaming calms him. I know a lot of people had a hard time with, the fact that he's a gamer and he likes to do video games a lot. It's literally him trying to recharge his battery. And he does it a lot less than he used to do. When he really starts delving into the games, like a lot, then I know something's up. He's in meltdown or shutdown mode. Maybe I'll try to talk to him, but I'm not expecting a whole lot, because like I said, they can't really express what they're feeling anyway. So it's kind of a futile situation. The best thing I can do is try to, keep his needs met, make sure I feed him, and, make sure he's okay. But let him have that gaming time. Let him watch his movies. Let him regroup and recharge. That's important to him. We talked about next family gathering, having him have some earbuds and his phone. That way he won't feel like he has to be so encumbered by everything around him. He can have that space to get off in his mind, separate from people. He can still hear people, he can still communicate, but it won't feel so overwhelming like everything's just engulfing him. That's the problem. When you have autism, it's just overload sensory issues, like just too many voices, too much light, too much noise. I have some sensory issues. I don't handle repetition well. I also don't like crosstalk. Like if people are talking all at once, forget it. I can't understand. That's why YouTube drove me nuts. When I first came here, the first 2 years, when certain people would have their chat rooms and people would be up on the microphone screaming at each other, over each other, I couldn't process anything they were saying because it was just a bunch of noise in my head. And it was totally, freaking me out. And I had to just leave those rooms. So anyway, yeah, earbuds are an option. Sunglasses are another thing. Making sure his eyes are shielded from light. He does have a light phobia, where I think that's what it's called. I'm not sure there's a name for it. But like when we go to the doctors, I have to make sure the doctors are not shining lights in his eyes constantly. Or if they leave the room, we make sure we turn the lights out completely or down low. Because that bright light shining on him, it's awful. I have trouble with lights, especially fluorescent lights. It literally feels like they are boring a hole through my head. I don't do well with fluorescent lights at all. And usually if I see them on a ceiling somewhere, like in a store or whatever, I will do my best to stay out from under them because I literally have mini seizures because of fluorescent lights. I actually had a mini seizure today riding home with my coworker from work. I didn't say anything to her about it, but she was driving and the heat was what triggered it for me. I just zoned out, basically. It's almost like going to sleep sitting up. But you're not really sleeping, your brain just shuts off, basically. I stop breathing for like seconds and then I come back to and we're driving along and I'm like, oh, okay, I had a mini seizure. I've had them since I was born. They were never diagnosed. They don't show up on seizure tests or anything like that. I don't know why. Even my psychiatrist didn't know years ago why they don't show up, but they don't. Doctors don't know everything, and hospitals don't have every single test. We need to figure things out either. So, anyway, another thing that I learned was, and we haven't done this yet, but making planners can sometimes help ease their mind that there is something and it's coming up, and they can kind of almost psych themselves up for this. One thing about people with autism, I think they need a lot of structure as far as they need to know what's expected and what is going to happen as much as possible. Even though nobody can tell the future, they need to know, okay, this is what's planned for tomorrow. We're going to the store. We're going here. We're doing that. We're meeting with these people or whatever. And they like to know well in advance so that they can process that in their mind and get ready for it. So planners for communication. When there's a communication breakdown, we have a lot of trouble in our marriage and in our relationship in general. We've learned to communicate. If he's upset, he comes to me and says, look, when you did this, it really upset me. Or I'm just having a hard time with this right now. I need some space. He's getting really good at that. I'm getting really good at not taking it personally and realizing this is the best thing for him. This is something that he needs because that is how his brain operates and processes things. Making planners for goals and skills. Having hobbies is a really important thing. Having things he's working towards. I'm proud of him because he saved up his money to buy something he wanted, and it's been years since he's been able to do that. So, yeah, having goals and skills is excellent. Having a support planner, having support people, like a support group, or just somebody he can talk to is important as well. I'm looking at some other notes I have here about reducing anxiety. You can make it visual, which is like the charting thing I talked about. Try to create less sensory environments. Like I said, turning down the lights, using earphones, writing down lists, talking gently. That is one thing I definitely needed to learn with handling communication with my husband, is that coming at him in an aggressive way, even if he just snapped at me snapping back at him, that doesn't work. And some people might say, well, that's kind of like a double standard. There is a double standard when you are married to or relating to somebody with high functioning or otherwise autism. There is a double standard. It's not a cruel one, it's just a necessary one. That sometimes they lash out and they are not in control of what they do. I'm not saying they have a right to beat you up or be nasty or whatever. I'm just saying sometimes they raise their voice, sometimes they get short tempered, sometimes they just can't control the fact that they're so overwhelmed, so frustrated that they're lashing out a bit. And we don't have a right, because they do that, to say, well, blank you just need to get over yourself, and I don't know why you're doing this, and you're not perfect either. And that doesn't work with somebody with autism. That just raises the escalation level more, and they have more of a meltdown or a shutdown. So I have learned to be very gentle with him and say, honey, I know you're upset. I didn't mean to upset you. I didn't mean to do that. That's hard for me because I have a sense of pride where I don't like admitting when I'm wrong. I just don't. I will do it. I don't like it, though. I don't like to be wrong. I don't like to hear that I'm wrong. And with somebody that is autistic, they don't miss much. You can't hide stuff from somebody, especially an empath, which my husband is. He catches on to things that I would have never known he knew. So I can't get away with much with him. So I have to, tone it down and talk gentler to him and not lash back when he gets upset. And then later he'll come to me and say, hey, I heard you say that you were upset with how my tone was. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, sound abrupt or whatever. I was just having a moment where I just couldn't deal with stuff. And, and then we kiss and make up and everything's okay. But yeah, it takes a lot when you're married to somebody with this type of thing. The best thing you can do is give them time to rest and space. And that's another thing I had to learn with Matthew, is that when he is in shutdown mode or he's in meltdown mode, to just leave him be. Don't ask him a bunch of questions. Don't constantly try to engage him. Don't talk to him about the dream I had, or show him something on the internet, or talk to him about somebody on YouTube or something going on. He can't process that. He's zoned out. He is tuned out, and he's trying to find himself again. He's trying to get back into a place where he can handle even a little bit of sensory stimulation. So I know a friend of mine had a child that was autistic, and I remember her talking about sensory stimulation, where she would literally brush his skin with different fabrics and brushes and stuff. It's to get them used to that extra touch. A lot of people with autism do not like being touched. Some of them like being touched a lot. My husband is a hugger. He loves to hug me. He likes that sort of thing, and that's good because one of my love languages is touch, so that works perfectly for me. So we've been hugging each other more, just purposely, because I need that, because that's my love language, and it makes me feel secure to be embraced, and he needs it because it's that gentle stimulation, sensory-wise, that helps him stay grounded. He also says I have soft skin. Nobody ever told me that before, but he is extra sensitive to that, because he would know if I had rough skin. He could tell. Like, I used to rub his back and he'd say, man, your hands are so rough. It just doesn't feel good on me, You need to put lotion on them or something. Soften up your hands. Lighten your touch, something. And I always just felt insulted. Like, well, how dare you, After a while, I learned that was a sensory thing. That hugs are important to him. And they bring him security. But also the grounding. The feeling like he's present and can cope with things. So we make sure we hug each other more often. That's really helped a lot. So anyway, the last thing I want to talk to you about with the autism is my daughter sent me something. Amber sent me something. It is actually a video. I'm going to play just a tiny clip of it because I don't want to get, in trouble for playing it. I will definitely reference it here. But it's a young girl talking about how she was autistic, diagnosed with autism. I think she was like 11 or something. I can't remember. But when she was younger, she didn't know if she was feeling like a girl or a boy. And so she was thinking of taking hormones to become a boy. And her parents and her church and people around her esteemed her as a girl and taught her you were female. And they loved her as a little girl. And so she didn't transition into a boy. And what they're finding out is that a lot of kids with autism have this thing where they can't relate to the upcoming changes in their body through puberty and all the things that they go through, the maturing. And so they don't know how to cope with it, and they're not sure what they feel. And when you have autism, you can't process emotions and changes and stuff in your body and biological things. So they would talk to their parents, and if there was enough pressure from outside society, they'd start giving these kids hormones and having them transition into the opposite gender. And this girl was just saying how thankful she was that her parents and her church did not force that on her and did not say, oh yeah, well, you're feeling like a boy, so we're going to make you into a boy. We're going to help you with that. She's glad they didn't. Now, I'm not going to cover whether you're pro or con against the 50 zillion genders that are out there, 72 or whatever it is now. I don't know. I have my own thoughts on that. I'm not going to get into because I don't feel like getting into a debate with anybody over it. I'm a Bible believer. I believe what the Bible says about it. Male and female created he, them. And that's the end of the story for me. All this other stuff, I can't with it. So we're not going to get deeply into that, but I just wanted to say that. So I'm going to play just the tail end of this. Take it for whatever it's worth. If it's not worth anything, throw it out. If it is, then consider it something educational.
You were so fortunate that your family and community were sane and did not indulge this delusion. And the scariest part is that a lot of the families who will indulge this kind of transgender mania that could be caused by any other number of conditions, notably autism, though you're right, that is cropping up quite a lot. A lot of these families just want to do what's best for their kid, and they're being told by these sickos on television and in the universities and in the political apparatus that the only way to treat your kid is to lop off their genitals and inject them with cross-sex hormones. Absolute irreversible damage that would have caused, frankly, and as you're describing in your case, greater regret than you were, and stress and anxiety than you were experiencing even in the moment. That's incredibly, I'm so glad that you were able to come through that and have a real medical diagnosis in the end that did not result in you mutilating yourself.
So, anyways, that's the gentleman that was interviewing the girl. Like I said, take it for whatever you want to take it for. He was saying how grateful he was that they did not do this to her. She was saying how grateful she was that her parents and her church stood by her. And that she was able to just be herself and feel comfortable as she was. Anyway, I just played that because I thought it was interesting that they're now linking autism to this type of gender confusion, if you will, many times. I'm not saying every time, but there's like a lot of it cropping up that they're finding out that people that are feeling these feelings and not able to process whether they're a girl or boy or what they are or who they are, that it is linked to autism many times. So just something to think about. I had never heard about it until my daughter sent me that, and it makes a lot of sense. Matthew even said it made a lot of sense. He's had a lot of struggles in his childhood as well because of not being able to process certain things. So yeah, he could relate to, that type of confusion and stuff. Anyway, that's all I have today on autism. I may be bringing more information as I come up with it and learn more about it, but that's kind of how it's operated in my marriage and in our life together and in his life. And I thought I would share it with you for whatever it's worth. We do have people on YouTube that are autistic. And what's interesting to me is that I have met some autistic people that are very angry people. And I'm not talking about YouTube. I'm talking about years ago online. And even in person. And they can be real nice one minute and just all of a sudden explode on you because you said something that made them feel unsafe or whatever, or they just didn't like your view on something, and they can attack you and be vicious. And then there's other people with autism that are absolute sweethearts all the time. So it's like any other type of diagnosis, I guess. There are levels of it, and there are ways that it affects different people. Everybody is not the same. No individual is exactly like another individual. Even twins are not exactly alike. So, yeah, just something to think about. I guess a new thing to talk about or discuss or ponder over. Maybe you know somebody that's autistic. Maybe you're autistic. Maybe you have that diagnosis, and you can add more into the comments. I'd love to hear from you. As always, if you like my videos or my channel or anything I do or say or am, feel free to hit the thumb up, like my videos, share the videos, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. If you have, welcome aboard. Also, join my membership if you like. I really don't even know what to do with my membership still. I am going to do some private streams. I need to talk to a few people about what those streams should be about, because I'm not sure of a topic right now. My life is honestly pretty dull most of the time. There's not a whole lot going on, which I'm happy to say. There's nothing major, no crimes happening in my family. People aren't dying left and right. Nothing bad is happening. So I don't really have any major issues that I can ever discuss. So I just talk about everyday normal things like my exercising, my diet, my flea problem, my cats, whatever. So if you do have topics you'd like to hear from my point of view, please let me know in the comments below. And I'll look forward to reading your comments. Thank you so much for your kind indulgence of listening to me share about autism. I hope it gave you something to think about or something to understand that maybe you didn't know before. Or maybe you can contribute and give me some ideas about it that I haven't really realized. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your time and your attention. And I'll talk to you soon. Be blessed and shalom. Thanks for watching.